Hi, I'm Dale Linden. I'd like to thank you for joining me on this webinar. It's kind of an exciting journey we're going to take today, and I want to get started right away by digging in. Now, if I were you sitting where you are, I'd be saying to myself, why do I want to listen to this guy? I mean, what does he possibly have to say that can be beneficial to me? Well, ever since I graduated from college, and that's more than, well, that's more years than I like to think about, but that's more than 40 years ago, actually quite a bit more than 40 years ago, I have had some form of leadership position, whether it's a head teacher in a small school or a bookkeeper with other bookkeepers reporting to me, or a nursing home administrator. I've always had some kind of a leadership position. And it's been my privilege, and I say that on purpose, privilege, to not only get a few things right, but to get a few things wrong. And I'm a great believer in experience being your best teacher. In fact, that's one of my mottos. All true learning is personal discovery. And how can you discover anything if you don't personally experience? So that's where my expertise comes from. I've accumulated an MBA, and I'm a certified emotional intelligence facilitator, and I've just been kicking around a long time. And that's why I think maybe you might want to listen to me, because I don't mind sharing my mistakes as well as my successes. And I'm not going to count up which has been more success or failure. But let me ask you a few questions to begin. First of all, do you have a team member, or maybe more than one team member, who doesn't really seem to care? I suspect you do. Are there other members of your team whose primary goal seems to be just to get by till quitting time? I never forget to being on an elevator downtown here, Orlando, a few months ago with a young lady. We only rode together for about 4 floors, but in that process, I learned some things about her that were upsetting to me. She said as she was getting off the elevator, well, at least today is pre-Friday. Now that was Thursday morning at 7:30, with 40% of her work week still ahead of her. And she was obviously focusing on Friday, and Thursday had just become pre-Friday. That's sad. Are there managers in your organization you wouldn't want to work for? Now, if you're in a position to do something about that, you might want to start making a little list of what you are going to do about that. And I'm not telling you to go out and fire everybody, but I would like to see you do something about those managers that you wouldn't want to work for. Because if you have them, odds are you do. If your organization is of any size, uh, why would you want your staff working for people you don't want to work for? What about negative attitudes? Are there people in your organization that you don't like to be around because they're always negative? Their cup never even reaches half full. It's always barely half empty. Are you happy about that? Do you have customer complaints? Are you happy with the percentage of people on your team who seem really talented and effective at their jobs? And what percentage of the members of your team are actually committed to doing their best to help the business succeed and to grow? Those are pretty heavy questions. We're going to talk about each one in some detail. Now, here's the thing. Research shows that lack of engagement and inspiration in the workplace is a cancer of epidemic proportions. In fact, I've been following these surveys for the past 10 years, and sadly, they don't change very much, maybe a point or two. And what they've shown for over 10 years that I'm aware of, and probably further back than that, is that for every 10 members on an average workforce, three, only three, are actively engaged in creating satisfied, loyal customers. And we all know it's hard to stay in business without satisfied, loyal customers. Of that 10, five are barely meeting minimum requirements, spending probably most of their time watching the clock to make sure they get out of there in time for their breaks and their quitting time. But here's the scary statistic, the worst one of all. 2 out of those 10 admit to actively being disengaged. And what might that mean? I mean, it certainly doesn't mean they're helping your business grow. In fact, it might mean they're actually sabotaging you. And that is something that should scare all of us. Looking at that information, I'm forced to conclude that if you have engaged employees, remember those 30%? Employees that are engaged can help your business grow. They're probably doing most of the work, creating most of the satisfied customers, creating most of the loyalty, and they're only 3 out of 10. Disengaged employees can put you out of business, particularly if you're above average in that department. And here is the thing that ought to bother everybody, but particularly that 30% who are engaged, satisfied, inspired, and loyal. They're probably getting paid the same amount as the negative people, the barely getting by people, the I'm going to help you get out of business people. Now, these 20% that are helping you go out of business, they may not have an active strategy that they're aware of, but they probably are doing it nonetheless. Well, there are a lot of reasons for this workplace cancer, and I have shared them with you, and I hope you've downloaded your handout. But the big one that we'll focus on for this and the next 2 webinars is poor relationships with supervisors. I mean, that is the really big problem. Poor relations with supervisor. Think about it from your own perspective. What's it like working for a boss you can't get along with? Here's my definition of leadership. I'd like to share it with you. Effective leadership is the ability to inspire individuals and teams to want to follow the leader to places and levels they wouldn't or couldn't go on their own. Now, there is a battle going on in most workplaces. The battle between the idea of engagement and inspiration versus management and direction. It's much better to engage. I'm going to give you a few leadership tools now that I think will help you. It begins with a clear definition of the vision and purpose of your job. Now, you might be saying, but we have very well thought out, creatively planned mission statements, purpose statements. Our values are posted on the wall. Well, have those values, has that sense of mission gone down to the level of staff? It's not something that happens. Putting it on the wall, it's not like a coat of paint. You can put green paint on the wall and the wall is green. You can hang a mission statement on the wall, but that doesn't mean everyone in your organization has bought into that mission. And that's something to be concerned about. So how do you clarify that vision? Well, there's a concept I'd like to share with you called alignment. One of your first jobs as a leader is to make sure that you are aligned with the values, mission, purpose of the company, and then you got to do what it takes via orientation, via private conversation, but right up front before the employee even hits the work area, are they aligned with it too? Can they buy into your mission? This is a difficult thing. Now, there's all kinds of talk about goals. The statistics seem to be that barely 5%, if that, of people in this country have taken the time to write down their goals. They even have goals, much less write them down. And yet the research also shows that people who do take the time to write their goals and remind themselves of them are almost 50% more productive than people who don't. But let's look at a simple little concept such as making New Year's resolutions. We've all done that, haven't we? We may not have written a formal goal statement because we might be one of the 95% who never did, but we've probably all made New Year's resolutions. Well, here's something that I discovered from Michael Hyatt, his research, I guess. 25% of the people who make New Year's resolutions have abandoned them in a week or less. How about that? 1/4. 60% abandon them within 6 months, just stop trying. Now let's look at weight loss. That's probably the most common. I tell people I've lost over 250 pounds in my life. Unfortunately, it wasn't at the same time. Well, actually, I've never weighed 250 pounds, so I guess I would have gone into negative weight territory if I actually had lost that much at one time. But here is the thing. Only 5% of those who lose weight on a diet keep it off. 95% regain it. Isn't that something? I learned probably 30 years ago from a psychologist that I met in Albany, New York, who told me that the reason people don't keep the weight off after they've lost it is they don't change their internal vision of themselves. The message for us in creating this clarity of vision and purpose that is in alignment between the company, the leader, and the staff, uh, we've got to internalize those values, that vision, that purpose. And that's only going to happen if you actually make it a point to sit down with your staff and find out if they agree. You might want to develop an absolutely clear mission and values purpose for your own department that's in alignment with those statements for the company as a whole. And then let your employees actually write their mission and their values. I think that is a clear tool of leadership success. The second one more piece of information. You would think that after a heart attack, people would be really bought into their new mission, vision, and purpose in life. But it turns out only 14% of patients who have had heart attacks really change the way they eat and exercise. 14%. They almost died, but they don't change. The second leadership tool is the emotional intelligence skills to listen beyond the words. Now, we're going to talk more about emotional intelligence over the next two webinars, but let me just give you an example of this. I was in a meeting just this morning with a friend I hadn't seen in well over a year. I knew some things about him because we had talked on the phone. I knew that some things weren't going quite as well as he might have thought they would be in his personal life. Business life, on the other hand, going gangbusters. I mean, the guy is probably making millions of dollars a year. He's in network marketing, and he shared with us that he had just been in the country of Korea, and as a result of 2.5 months over there, created a network of over 20,000 Korean individuals in his network marketing program. I mean, so he's doing well, and he's starting up a new business, and he told us about this new business that he's starting. But I was looking at his eyes, and there was a sadness in his eyes. I spoke to him afterwards and said, "We need to talk, for you, not me." And he seemed grateful, because I think there is that sadness. The third leadership tool I'd like to share with you is a personal frontal attack on negative attitudes. You wouldn't tolerate a little poison in your soup, would you? So why would you tolerate negative attitudes? Negative attitudes kill people. In my work as a consultant, I've actually been told by staff members in an organization we had been called in to help them solve their employee recruitment problems. They gave me names of individuals whose negative attitudes had driven potentially otherwise good staff off. So have a negative attitude elimination plan. I'll be offering a copy of my plan to you in a future webinar. So look forward to that. Or you could email me and ask me for it. I might send it to you early. That's Dale@EYPnow.com. Then there is this desire to discipline. I have been in this business of leadership for a long time. We talk about write-ups. I'm going to write you up. Now, that's never, ever anything good. A write-up is one of the worst things that can happen to you. It's the most common approach. Usually they're done without any input from the person being written up. Just a leader drew a conclusion, wrote up the coaching plan, defined the problem, and gave them a correction plan, otherwise known as "here's your punishment." But use mistakes as an opportunity to learn. Be a mentor. You can look that up. It means let people learn from their mistakes. Experience is, as I said earlier, the best teacher. Learn how people learn. Now, that sounds a bit redundant, but basically people have different learning styles. There are about 3 that are recognized. The auditory, some people learn better by just listening. Some people learn better by vision, and others have to actually get their hands dirty, get in there and experience the learning. For myself, it's a combination of all learning styles. That's why in my webinars, I not only give information, I like to do them not just with PowerPoint, but with the chance to look me in the eye as you can do right now. Here I am looking you in the eye. But I also want to give you exercises that you can work with, because I know that everybody in my audience is not the same when it comes to learning styles. So get familiar with those learning styles and give the people the information that they need in a way that they can learn. In other words, give them an opportunity to uh, hear you describe a proper procedure. Let them watch you do it right, and then you stand back and watch them do it, coach and critique. That's the most effective way. Fifth leadership tool, or I guess this is the sixth one now, is stress release and fun-based incentives. I've been my whole career, most of my career actually, in healthcare, and we're very serious about our work there. And I can remember on a fun day a nurse saying, "I don't have time to have fun." I also hear I don't have time to take breaks. I can't take my vacation. I'm too busy. Interestingly enough, there's research that clearly proves that if you take your breaks, you're up to 10% more productive. If you take that vacation, you come back refreshed. If you walk away from a knotty problem, you tend to come back with a solution somehow ready to leap forward in your mind. Uh, Focus on a problem that you might be having in your organization and create a fun incentive program. Race for safety. Very simplest form of my race for safety. I saved one company well over $500,000 a year in just their insurance premiums alone with fund-based incentives. One nursing home particularly that I was working with, they got into a drawing, just a monthly drawing, and then they were going to have a big annual drawing. And I'm going to tell you that the amount was not big, because I know that administrator, he was pretty cheap. But people were so committed to achieving 1 year of injury-free or not lost time workplace record that one poor cook heading out the door about 2 days before Christmas slipped on a patch of ice, broke her leg, was back in the next day demanding that they let her do something because she didn't want to ruin it for the rest of the staff who'd worked so hard. Next tool, we always hear, don't let your staff bring their personal life to work, but I can tell you there's no way that they can avoid that. Particularly when you're writing out the schedules, have some sensitivity to the needs of individuals. Try to help them achieve their personal goals as well as your business goals. The best performance motivational system does include rewards and consequences. I don't want to say penalties, but sometimes you do have to give people a punishment. But you never want to just do one or the other. Don't think that just rewarding good behavior will work. There has to be a price to pay for negative behavior as well. Then there is a process for matching the talents and preferences of individuals to the performance needs of the job. And that's going to be covered in more detail on webinar 3. But right now, I would like to show you a video that will use me as a case study. Well, I guess I have to select the video first. There it is. And please learn from my experience. So, time to wrap up and take a look at maybe some action plans, a little review of what we probably did here. I hope you understood that the main point of the case study of myself was to give you an opportunity to see in a real life experience what can happen when the job doesn't fit the individual very well. I had thought I could delegate, but I couldn't delegate keeping an eye on things, and that was my weakness, my problem. So, what can you do right now? Well, for right now, the only thing I can recommend is that there are 2 more webinars, and I want you to watch those when they come down. And other than that, let's look forward at the next webinar, which I've entitled as a working title, Engaging and Inspiring with Your Most Effective and Natural Leadership Style. We're going to look deeper at engagement and try to understand why it's important. We're going to explore the difference between managing and directing versus engaging and inspiring. We're going to look at the impact of personality on the ability to engage and inspire. We're going to take a look at what an engagement culture might include. And finally, we're going to look at your leadership style, or at least help you look at your leadership style to see where you might be most successful. I want to thank you for being part of this live seminar, and I'll see you at the next webinar.